President Biden, as you know, has been busy today touting his newly unveiled proposal to reform the Supreme Court. He did so in Austin, Texas. In doing so, he criticized the court's recent ruling granting former President Trump and any president's immunity for official actions while in office.
This nation was founded on the principle there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law. And for all practical purposes, the court's decision almost certainly means that the president can violate their oath, flout our laws, and face no consequences.
Joining us is Tom Dupree. He formerly served as the Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Tom, great to have you here. Always good to talk with you. What do you make of the Biden proposals?
Well, politically, I think it's a non-starter. I can't imagine that surprises Biden or his allies to learn that the Republican response was that this is just not going anywhere. I think substantively, I guess what worries me a little bit is that these proposals for Supreme Court reform are being proposed in such an openly, transparently political context. Clearly, the president is upset at recent Supreme Court decisions, and he says, look, I want to kind of reset the membership, enact fundamental reforms. But the fact that this is being done in a politicized way so soon before the election makes me think that they may not be looking out for the best institutional interests of the nation in the Supreme Court, but rather trying to fire up the base and score some political points.
Democrats are concerned about Justice Clarence Thomas. They think he has been too cozy with his friends, and that remains an issue. As someone who served in the Bush administration in some capacity, how do you think conservatives react to that Democratic criticism?
Well, I think the conservatives often will say, look, how come ethics has now become a thing? In other words, conservatives will point to other situations where you had more liberal justices being involved in ethical issues or raising the same types of concerns, and you didn't see the same groundswell, at least on the left, for Supreme Court ethics reform. And so I think a lot of conservatives really see this as an attack on the conservative justices, on the conservative outcomes that have been prevailing lately in the Supreme Court, rather than a meaningful way to get reform. The court, of course, also just did adopt its own ethics code after coming under incredible pressure from all sides. They adopted it, and I think a lot of people say, give this a chance to work before we go to reform the court.
In the legal world, though, so this is the president in the executive branch proposing reform to the judicial branch. The judicial branch, some people have said, well, they shouldn't police themselves. Is there any other option for Supreme Court oversight? Is it Congress at the end of the day or not?
Well, if you're talking about just the structure of the Supreme Court and the way they govern their internal operations, I do think that is the Supreme Court's prerogative to make its own decisions. I mean, the Constitution creates the Supreme Court as our third branch of government, the judiciary. And so in that sense, it really is the court's prerogative to police its own house, decide how it's going to conduct its own operations, just as the Supreme Court wouldn't purport to instruct a president on how he must fulfill his executive duties or purport to direct Congress that they have to pass certain laws. There are certain things that each of the branches do by themselves. And although there can be regulation and there's always kind of a creative push and pull, I think at the end of the day, what's being talked here is the core function of the Supreme Court and how it organizes its internal affairs.
Among top attorneys in this country, is there a belief in private that eventually the court will expand and not just have 9 justices? Or is there a sense that it could very much become a bigger court with term limits in the near future?
I don't see it happening. I see the proposals continuing. I think when you have a slew of decisions that people on one side or the other don't like, there is going to be talk about expanding the court and changing its membership. But practically, I don't see it happening. We have had 9 justices for a long time. Justice Ginsburg famously said she thought 9 was the right number. It's not required by the Constitution. We've had times in our nation's history where we've had fewer than 9 justices, more than 9 justices, but the 9 membership has remained constant since the Civil War. And I think most people agree it's the right number. You become very cumbersome if you have a court with 20 or 30 people on it. 9 seems like the right number, and I think we're going to be sticking with it for a while.
And very quickly, who do you think the next justice to retire is?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it depends who wins the election. So we see that, and then I think you can make a bet as who's going to retire next.
Oh, wait. We do actually have a minute left here. The term limits, what do you make of President Biden, 18 years, putting that number in specifically as the guideline?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, look, I will say I'm not a big fan of Supreme Court reform by and large. I think the court as currently structured and formulated has served this nation very well for a long time. That said, look, I think term limits, I can see one advantage to it is that it really would untether the Supreme Court appointment process from the political process in a way that we don't have now, where you do have the fortuity of particular presidents getting to make multiple appointments. Some presidents don't get make any appointments. just depending on the timing of when people leave the court. So that would have the advantage of making it more regular. So you would know that every president will appoint one, maybe two justices of his or her own choosing.
Well, President Biden keeps getting out there. I think we're going to keep hearing a lot about this Supreme Court proposal.
I think you're right.
But whether it's realistic politically, the Speaker said today it's dead on arrival. Senator Graham told me over the weekend, no way, no how he works with Democrats on this. So we'll have to see how this all moves ahead.
We'll stay tuned.
But Tom Dupree will stick with CBS News. You see him all the time on our airwaves. And so we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you.